Hi, and welcome back to another episode of ADK Talks. I'm Jane Ackerman, and we bring you the best of the Adirondacks. Whether it's a place to stay, eat, shop, or something to experience, we are your guides to discovering the amazing things to do in New York State's 6 million acre Adirondack Park. Today, we're stepping into a slice of Adirondack history, part mercantile, part historical landmark, and all heart, the Schroon Lake Department Store. We are joined by the owners, Amanda and Ryan Ragland, who brought this local treasure back to life. Welcome, Ryan and Amanda.
Thanks for having us, Shane.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So just by way of introduction, we'll get into the origins of the store, but just you guys, I think, Ryan, you're originally from Schroon Lake, correct?
So I'm originally from the Clifton Park area, but
Okay.
we would spend every vacation up this way. So that's how I got connected with the area.
Okay. And Amanda, you through marriage by default, you got connected too.
I was married into the beautiful lake area. Ryan started taking me when we first started dating to Eagle Lake, which is
Oh,
not
that's
too far
beautiful.
from Schroon. And, between Ticonderoga and Schroon Lake region, we were able to kind of introduce me to the area. So that's kind of how I became about upstate New York
That's awesome. And
visitor.
you guys became the owners of what was the town store and is now the Schroon Lake Department Store. It once was the Schroon Lake Department Store, but now is again the Schroon Lake Department Store. Now, how many years have you guys owned it?
Yes, this is our third season. So we've owned it for 2 years and we're going into our third year.
And what made you make the big leap?
Maybe Ryan can share our little origin story there.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously have loved this area my entire life. Like I said, I grew up vacationing on Eagle Lake every summer. It was always the week of my birthday, so it always felt really special. And my dad would always joke that like we breathe the air up here before anybody else. So we have deep emotional ties to this area, and we always, I think, saw ourselves retiring up this way, which we're a couple years away from that at this point. But we over the years have lost some pretty important people in our lives at really kind of like an unfortunately young age. And there's this part of the American dream where you work so hard your entire life to be able to retire and do that thing. And we just kind of got rocked by the number of people that we've had who've passed so young and never got to enjoy all that hard work. So rewind time here, it's 2020. The world is kind of flipped on its head with the coronavirus, and everybody's perspectives kind of changed. And for me, especially, it helped me reprioritize the things that were really important and kind of brought some of those other feelings to the forefront. When the store popped up in town, and we live on Paradox Lake, which is, just a short drive away. It's only about 10 minutes from town. The store popped up for sale, and we actually had friends who were staying at our house. We weren't in town, and they said, "Hey, the town and the store in town is for sale." And we said, "Well, which one?" We had no idea what they were talking about. And when we got back to the house and we went into town and we saw the number on the front of the building, I think Amanda and I deliberated for all of, 2 minutes before we picked up the phone and called and scheduled an appointment. So it was fairly impulsive on one hand, but kind of due to the underlying idea that life is really short and we weren't really enjoying our professional careers anymore at that point, and we loved this community. So we just thought, what's the worst that could happen? We can try this, and if it doesn't work out, we always have a career to fall back on, and why not?
Yep.
That's awesome. Now, what was your experience with retail prior to that? I know, Amanda, you and I spoke briefly a few weeks ago. I know that you work for Anthropology. What else? Ryan, how about you? Were you in the retail space?
I mean, no.
Well, you were a shopper, maybe, but
Yeah, when you were a young kid, did your
Yes,
memories?
I do. I have memories shopping in the store that we now own as a child, which is kind of weird. But I was a middle school science teacher primarily.
oh, God bless you. My
Yeah.
dad taught middle school social studies for 30 years. So I
Yeah.
think middle school teaching is probably one of the noblest professions. But we digress as we often do on the podcast, but continue. So you were a middle school science teacher. Wow. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It takes a unique person to be a middle school
Yeah.
teacher. And I enjoyed it for a long time. But yeah, I mean, I would work odd jobs every summer, kind of as you first do when you start out teaching and you're not making a lot of money. And I liked to just kind of pick a different job every summer, just to experience something new and learn something new. That's part of my personality type. So I've worked in retail settings, but never, didn't have any really relevant experience to run my own retail business. That's Amanda's strength for sure.
Yeah, my formal training, I went to school for it, specialized in buying and planning, had a, 14-year career in corporate retail, primarily at Anthropology, where I specialized in buying and procuring and developing products for the home side of the business, which I loved. And it has been really nice to be able to find an outlet that we can continue to do that, but also in different categories that I never thought I would be doing, like apparel and candy and just some other
Fishing
fun categories.
equipment. Yeah.
Fishing. Although I
Fishing
do
and
lean on
camping.
Ryan for those worlds.
We've been going to Schroon Lake, for 40 years. It seems to be having a little renaissance, which we can get into a little bit. I don't know that I ever noticed that department store there. So what's sort of the history of the building? And I'd love to hear about your journey in I don't know, revitalizing it or breathing new life into it.
The history is a little bit up in the air still. We've
Mm.
kind of done our own independent research and we've tapped other community members, who've been around for a long time and know a lot of the history of the town. Regarding the building specifically, we've tried to kind of pin down when it was originally built. As of right now, we've got it back to the 1860s. We know that there
Wow.
was a store there. For all we know, it could have been built before that. We just know that there was an operating business in that building at that time. So the building has been added onto over the years. We know the main structure is originally 1860s. We know they added a shoe department in the late 1800s. They added a ice cream parlor originally on the left-hand side of the building called Idle Hour at some point, and
Oh,
then that
wow.
became an indoor space, which is why our building right now says lunch on that side of the building, which is always wonderfully confusing for people. But the building itself has just had, a wonderful history of kind of just being that one-stop shop. I mean, they used to bring ice in from the lake and store it in the store. You could buy coal or meat or cigarettes or candy. There used to be a soda jerk station. I mean, you name
Mm.
it. There's a lot of rumors of things that the building used to do and have in it. Like one of the, or I think they said, someone told us they had the first vacuum system, like when you go to the bank and put
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah,
money and it
yeah.
goes
Like
over
that
to the teller.
hydraulic. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so apparently the building used to have one of those.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of stuff we've heard, and we've been trying to work our way through to find some good historical sources to prove that those things are in fact um, true.
Yeah. And the building is quite large. I mean, you think department
Hmm.
store, and in current state, it signifies a very large space. And we do try to cover it all. So when they had that hydraulic system, in the back would be the produce section, and then there'd be the confectionery section. So you would go around to each different department and shop. And then the cashier or the sales associate in that section would then send your bill up and through the system into the main cashier at the front of the store for when you were to check out. So it's a pretty cool little thing.
Oh, that's neat. So you see this place is open, you sort of have in the back of your mind, you want to make this big life change. What kind of environment were you hoping to create when you were envisioning this store? What did you want it to be? What did you want people to feel and experience when they came in?
I mean, for me, I wanted there to be this element of nostalgia, right? So honoring the building's history. I'm a bit of a history nerd, right? So the idea that we could kind of bring that history back to life was important to both of us, really. But I also wanted it to feel like home, right? Like we make a point of, talking to our employees, and just reminding them, like, hey, whenever anybody comes through the door, like, make sure you say hello, like, greet them, because it is kind of always a little bit humbling sometimes when, like, you are authentic in asking that question and greeting somebody, and they just kind of look up and are like, oh, you're talking to me. Right? Like, this is a
Right.
small town, and we wanted to maintain that authenticity of that small town feel, and just making people feel like they're welcome. And we've tried to institute a whole bunch of things that kind of express that message. So we have quite a few folks who laugh too and joke, though their dogs will pull them into our store,
Ah.
because they know that they're going to get treats and love and scratches. So I really just wanted the store to echo what it felt like in its heyday, but also just be really inviting for people.
Yeah. We also really feel like it's important to have a sense of discovery.
Mhm.
There's so many things and products to see. And when people come in, the idea that they can just spend an hour wandering and discovering and laughing and, you know, sharing with others that are in the space, because a lot of people come in with their family or different generations within their family, and to be able to have, grandma and grandpa playing with the kids in the toy section and having a ball is a great memory to have, right,
Mhm.
as part of your visit to Schroon Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah. I go in, so I get my dogs groomed at ADK Groomers just outside of Schroon Lake. A little plug for Carissa. She does an awesome job. But I have to kill an hour and a half while the dogs are getting groomed. So my routine is to go into Pitkins, which is just down the road from you guys, have a late breakfast or early lunch. And then I usually have like another half hour to kill. And it's dangerous if I go into your store because you've got an amazing array of really interesting and unique merchandise. It's not stuff that I see elsewhere. And the Pinecone Mercantile, which is also in Schroon Lake, is the
Yes.
same thing too, you guys. But you have different sort of product lines, but they're both unique and charming. And I'm lucky if I can get out of there, within 30 minutes and without buying a bunch of stuff too. Um, but I can't where do you do your sourcing and buying? I mean, obviously your experience on Anthropology probably helps out a lot, but it's just the coolest stuff. And a lot of it seems local, at least Adirondack made, or at least Vermont or Northeast. It's really interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun, right? That's a project that Ryan and I truly get to do together. So we will go to some local shows where they are hosted so we can find some of those local vendors. We're really fortunate too, since we've opened our doors as new owners, we've had a lot of local artists coming
Mm,
into the store and saying, "Hey, I make this product. Would you be interested in it?" Or authors, a lot of authors as well, local
yeah,
authors. And then we travel. So we'll go to different shows throughout the US. And what we love to do is truly buy things that we would personally buy ourselves,
sure.
things that we feel like are quality. And that's something that we've been trying to really focus on growing and improving the assortment since maybe what, the past has been.
I think that's a large part of it, just kind of always being on the lookout for the things that we need, and the things that people are expressing to us. Hey, I need a belt, right? Like, and then sourcing what we think is going to be like the best quality for the most affordable price. And I think the fact that we have a lot of local things is kind of twofold. We obviously, being a small business, believe in supporting businesses as locally to us as we can. And then there's also an element of, and we're becoming keenly aware of that given the current situation, but the further something travels to you, oftentimes the more it's going to cost. And we're when we bought the store, we were very aware and cognizant of price sensitivity, and we're in kind of a unique market where we see both sides of that. So we're always kind of trying to find, the thing that's going to wear in and not out, and finding the balance of providing the best quality we can for the most affordable price that we can. And that doesn't always mean that it's inexpensive, but it also means when you walk out the door with it, I feel good about having sold that thing to you because I know it's going to provide you joy for a long period of time.
And you also have to appeal to two audiences, the people that are coming in who are here on vacation and visiting, and locals too. I mean, just personally, I feel like you balance that line really well. I just want to go back a little bit. So you bought the store. How much renovation did you do before you opened it? And then I know after the first season, you spent that a whole winter really renovating.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us what that was like. Yeah.
Yeah. Where to start here?
We look back and I'm like, how did we do it?
Yeah, I have no
How
idea.
did we do it?
A lot of hours and a lot of great friends and family.
A lot of great friends and family. We got the keys and we opened.
So we got the keys April, maybe second week in April.
Yep.
And opened the doors
4 weeks later.
Wow.
And Ryan was still teaching in Delaware, in
Wow.
Pennsylvania, living in Delaware, teaching as a teacher in Pennsylvania. I was living here in town and scouting working two jobs, still working my previous job. And at nighttime, me and my friend, she would do the same. We would work remotely at the home and then go over to the store and just start opening boxes, receiving inventory, remerchandising, moving fixtures. So the first year we, kind of made the space our own in small tweaks because of the timeline that we were allotted before we opened the doors. And then this past winter is when we really spent the energy giving the interior some love and clearing out the space and starting fresh. And Ryan really was at the helm of that, along with a lot of friends and family helping us burn the midnight oil. Mm-hmm. We definitely bit off a lot this past winter, or 2 winters ago, I guess it would have been.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. We've got a couple in town that we're really close with, and he's like, "What were you thinking buying a building from the 1800s? Weren't you, terrified?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, on some level, sure, right? Like it's a large building. It's over 4,000 square feet, but my philosophy was like, this thing is built out of literal trees. Like you can see the bark on them. It's enormous timber, and it's already been there for an extensive period of time, so on some level there's comfort there, but then on the other level you have years and years and years of, people just slapping the lipstick on the thing to make it look pretty. And that doesn't mean that it's going to stand the test of time. So, I mean, this past winter, we were in the store 7 days a week, from sun up to sundown. And even just removing the inventory from the sales floor was quite a chore. And then it just became what can we do to give this sales floor longevity, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and that involved sanding every square inch of the store and uncovering the things that people did just to make things serviceable and, patch this and fix that. And so last year was really just a strip everything back as far as we possibly could to make everything as right as we possibly could, update everything that needed updating. And we discovered some pretty cool stuff along the way. So we kept, our social media was the most active it's ever been time last year, just because we were finding so many wonderful things.
Talk about some of those things, because it was really cool. I was following you guys then.
Yeah,
I still am, but
the big reveal for us was we could find all these photos of the building, from the early 1900s, which mm-hmm. is what we, I think, consider to be the business's real heyday. That's when town was really, bustling. You still had the Leland House and all the other like incredible properties that were in and around Schroon. And we could see that there was stained glass on the front of the building and that the store used to be called the Schroon Lake Department Store. And it just so happened that we had, this wooden detail across the front over the exact spot where the stained glass used to be. So we closed down Christmas Eve last year, and like the day after Christmas, I think we drove up to the store and I got out my tool belt and we popped some of the wood off. And sure enough, the stained glass was back there, albeit it was in really rough shape when they put up that wooden detail in the front of the store. Nails were through the display. There were old lights and they had knocked some of it out, but we found some great folks down in Glens Falls who were able to kind of do that restoration. So we brought that back. That was a big part of, kind of reclaiming the identity of the building and what we wanted the business to feel like. But then we also found just, some stuff that at the time too, we had no idea what it was, right? We had this, I even forget what it's called now, but the like pulley line driven system that somebody was able to identify on Facebook. We found old cobbler's tools, clay pipes down in the crawl space,
Ginormous saws,
yeah,
as well as our friends.
Prohibition
Wow.
era whiskey bottle.
Or did you
Yeah,
have a
right.
little speakeasy history or any legging history or?
Nothing that we've been able to uncover. I think what Ryan was able to find was an old bottle that unfortunately was empty.
Still had the cork in it. But
Oh, that's
unfortunately,
funny.
no whiskey in there, much to my dismay.
And I think that was probably, it was in the dirt ground underneath one of the floors that, was mixed in with all the workers' clay pipes, that they probably had been smoking when they had done the extension on the building. And so no direct history to any of the Prohibition period that we know, but I'm sure there was something going on. We hear of like reports of people being like, I remember when my, dad or grandpa used to play poker upstairs,
Oh,
and
wow.
they had rooms for rent in the building back in the day. And so there's a lot of little hidden spaces within that building. I can only imagine the stories that weren't written down.
Yeah, if the walls could talk for sure, I know they'd have some fun things to say.
Oh, do you get a lot of people who come in and, maybe older people who say, I used to come in when I was a kid, or, my grandfather used to bring me here. Do you get a lot of sort of that traffic too?
Yeah, we get a lot of people coming in saying, when I was a kid, either I remember coming here and getting this, or, this was my first place I had my first job. And it's, a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
references between the 70s and the 90s.
Mhm.
I think most common story we get is, I remember I used to come in here as a kid and I would get followed around like I was going to steal something. Here's a good history of an older couple who had owned the store at one point, probably between the 70s and 90s, that I don't think they loved children being in the
Right.
space. So that's a big memory for a lot of people.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
That's so funny. What's something that maybe some merchandise that you selected that surprised you, like how well it sold? Or is there something that you selected that you're like, wow, I can't believe that took off, or that people, have such an affection for that?
Yeah, I think our first year, it probably would have been the hummingbird swings. We had
Really?
found this lovely company who sells these. It's like the grandfather had developed a hummingbird swing. So when the hummingbirds come to feed, they have a place to rest. And when they rest on this swing, it swings. And, it's about a $15 item. And yeah, that took off our first year. The
Wow.
number, I mean, everyone has love for hummingbirds and birds. So that category, I think, was a nice surprise. Yeah, what
That's
else,
really
Ryan?
cool. Do you still carry them? My dad would love that.
We
Father's Day's coming
do.
up.
We
Okay, good.
do. Yeah.
Good. Dad, don't listen to this.
And I
That's
think last year we had puppets were something that
oh,
we got so excited. We found this great brand at a show, and they have some just realistic looking animals as well as some more, soft and cuddly creatures and puppets, you just,
yeah.
that was one that what surprised us too in the kids section.
There's something really satisfying with the puppets too, I think, of like in a digital age, seeing kids pick them up and play with them and
Mhm.
use their imagination. That was really, really wonderful too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I did a lot of my stocking stuffer shopping in your store this year. And one of my nephews, who's an adult, but is still candy crazy. And I loved all your sort of nostalgia, like the sugar babies and Charleston chews and candy that I haven't seen since I was a kid. Where do you get that stuff? Where do you source that?
Yeah, we have one particular. So there's a gentleman in Pittsburgh who has a company called Grandpa Joe's, and Grandpa Joe actually comes from the name from the Willy Wonka.
Oh, right, with the golden ticket. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
his passion is candy, and nostalgia candy obviously comes with that. And so he has done an amazing job sourcing and procuring all of this, candy that, we all grew up, knew and loved, even our grandparents, and, kind of even sourcing from international locations. Like we carry the Mars bar from the UK. So yeah, we get a lot of our candy from him.
That's funny. Well, what's also ironic, and again, not to get off on a tangent, is this nephew went to the University of Pittsburgh and now lives in Philly. So it's a good thing I didn't know that. He doesn't know this now because he might have been like Grandpa Joe's biggest client. I found things for my other nephew's fiance, who's, very into yoga and meditation. There were some beautiful candles and oils and things like that. I just, the variety of stuff that you carry is, you appeal to a lot of different types, but do you have in your mind who your sort of ideal customer is?
That's a hard one because as a professionally trained, retailer, that's something you would have in your head. Who's our target customer? Who's our target audience? And for us, it just runs the gamut. I mean, everything from a 5-year-old running around the store in the kids section looking for something tangible to squeeze to, someone in their 70s to grandma, who's coming and shopping, whether it's for her and she wants a souvenir sweatshirt or something for her kitchen, to buying something for her grandchildren of all ages. So yeah, it's definitely a tall order for us to think about, but also the unique and fun element. And I also think it just goes back to like everyone's a kid at all ages. And thinking about, what is entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, it really is tough. We have people coming in, asking for jumper cables. You get it all, especially on Sundays when, Curtis Lumber or some other business that sells those essentials is closed. And I think it also comes back to the history of this business always just kind of being the everything to everyone.
Yeah.
Over the years, which is, something that we were fortunate to inherit. And are just trying to build off of.
Right. And there is sort of that tradition in the Adirondacks, of sort of that, if we don't have it, you don't need it. Like Charlie John's in, I think they're in Speculator, or Pine's Department Store in Indian Lake. That's sort of same thing. They've got a lot of really cool stuff, but they also have like the essentials that you need as well. Yeah. That's a history and I think a legacy that is kind of gone by the wayside, except for a few special places. So that's really cool. How did the community of Schroon Lake react when word got out that you were bringing the place back to life?
Oh my gosh, biggest cheerleaders. Just the amount of support was so strong, and so many just such excitement for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those. Our perception of it before we started was just being really nervous, right? Because change, regardless of what it is, can be really scary to people. And this is a business that has been around for a very long time. So we were really nervous that we were going to upset people, and really, really surprised is the wrong word, but really grateful, like Amanda said, for the amount of support that we received. I think people saw that what we were doing was really intentional and was grounded in, history. We were just trying to bring back the department store, which is why we ultimately opted to rename it once we had the stained glass restored, which, it seemed like the building was just sending us a sign and a signal
Right.
So to have received so little negative feedback and just had such overwhelmingly positive support, and the number of people who offered to help and jump in and you know to gift memorabilia to us
Oh,
of the
wow.
building was really a cool thing, and we're still working on putting together a wall that kind of highlights all of that. um but we really felt good about bringing back the history of it, and I think that's ultimately what made it feel so special.
Yeah.
So, you're 3 years into, making this major pivot in your lives. What's been the best part of being an independent business owner?
For me, the community that we've gained has been
Mm,
invaluable. I just love being a part of it. And I just feel like every time we open the doors, we like open the doors to our home
mm,
to greet people in. So to me, that's the most special part about having a space with on Main Street, that we can welcome people in.
Yeah. Feels like our batteries are being filled every time we step into the space instead of being drained,
that's
um,
awesome.
which is
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, what's been the hardest part, or what didn't you anticipate, maybe, that you've either had to sort of maybe not overcome but adjust to?
It's way, way more work than I think we thought it was going to be, right? Like we definitely worked hard in our professional
Of course,
careers,
yeah.
but there's that element of you're working for an organization that has, hundreds of people, right? There's a lot of people to share the load. And we've always been really fortunate to have really great employees and a really great community. But there's certain things that at the end of the day, like Amanda and I still have to be the one to hit send.
Right.
And there's a lot more of that than I think either of us anticipated.
Hmm.
And part of the reason that we opted to make this move was to be able to live that Adirondack life and slow down a
Hmm.
little bit, be closer to family and enjoy those small moments. So we've been trying to figure out how to balance that, right? Like on one hand, we'd like the business to be successful and we'd like it to help, as you said, Schroon is kind of experiencing a period of growth and we'd like to help contribute to that, but it's also finding that right balance of just being able to put the laptop down at night
Mm.
and cuddle on the couch and watch some you know Ted Lasso or whatever is going to make you feel
Come on, I know it's the Real White Housewives of Beverly Hills. You're not fooling anybody.
good. You soften my roof.
Yeah, I can totally empathize. I spent most of my career in New York City, and other places in marketing and financial services. Some very, the biggest organizations you can imagine. I won't mention any names, but now I'm my own IT person, HR person, legal department.
Yeah.
It was a lot more than I expected, but it's also, and I think you sort of said this, but if I make a mistake, it's my mistake, and it's not, I don't have to do something stupid that somebody else is making me do. If I do
Mhm.
something
Yeah.
stupid, it's because I did it,
Yeah.
and there's kind of like an okay satisfaction with that. So
Yeah.
I love that. If you could tell the future generation of small business or independent business owners in the North Country, one thing that they should know before they set up shop, a piece of advice, what might it be?
It's a tough one. I think what makes the Adirondack so special and so unique is that you have these sort of micro cultures and climates that exist within the park. I always try and tell people, it's unique to me, and I didn't have the perspective on this until I was an adult to be able to look back on this. But the norm for most people when they vacation is to pick a new vacation spot every year.
Hmm.
You don't just pick the same house in the same week in the same place and go back every year. And that tends to be the norm up here. And I think what that means is you have these small towns and small communities that are wonderful, beautiful places, but move at their own pace, right? It's
Hmm.
it's it's different than the frenetic pace of New York City. It's different than really anywhere else. So you can't come into a community like that and just light the world on fire, right? You
Right.
need to be cognizant of the fact that, most of these businesses are going to be seasonal businesses, and you can experiment and you can dabble, but you need to be patient. It's knowing that community that you're going to become a part of, and how to integrate yourself into that, and just be realistic with what you can produce, right? Summer is like a really important time for us. And our focus has been on growing what we can grow at that time. And then, being a little bit more slow and patient with the shoulders of those seasons,
Mhm.
if that made sense. And I was able to articulate that.
I think that's absolutely right. These are small towns too, and everybody knows each other. And so you kind of have to be careful what you say to who. And relationships are really important here, and
Yeah.
that's one thing that I've learned easily and quickly, and luckily did not have any issues with. But starting from the same person that who might cut your hair is also might be the person who's the town supervisor, who might be related to the dog catcher, who might be related to the waitress at your favorite restaurant. So, you kind of have to just be aware, and that it's a small town. Well, I think all towns are small town, but also to your point earlier, people really want to see people succeed. And I think that unless you're a real jerk, everyone is sort of pulls for each other. So it's really nice. I do have to ask, because it comes up a lot. Do you have a ghost?
We have never had any ghost experiences in the building, but being that the building is from the 1860s, I'm sure there are some stories along the way. When we met our employees for the first time, I think it was more of an excuse to blame the ghosts on things than actually seeing a ghost.
Okay.
Maybe, did the thing move, or we can't find that thing? Maybe the ghosts moved it, but no, we don't have any good, strong stories to share.
I mean, that being said, from somebody who is not superstitious, when I'm in the building late and there's no lights on, it doesn't feel like, you know, I do my business and I get in and out as quickly as possible. I don't
Right,
linger.
right. You don't linger. Okay.
Yeah.
We had the Adirondack Park Paranormal Society on. They were awesome, really fun group of
Oh,
people.
cool.
And one of the things that we talked about was, you know, ghosts will often present themselves to people who are more empathetic, right? So
Mm.
you might not be on the frequency of their ghost because they don't know you, or they're not going to present themselves, where somebody who's more of an empath might have that experience. But I'm not going to get too deep into this, but it's this region, especially the area between Lake George, Ticonderoga, Lake Champlain, where this area was very well traveled, and colonial and revolutionary war times, even the War of 1812, all the kinds of battles and stuff. There's all kinds of great stories, which we can go into at another time. But
Yeah.
I'm very surprised at, we talked to Great Camp Sagamore, and
Mm.
just sort of off the record, they told me that they've had some activity, and so I just have to ask,
Yeah.
what sort of, have you ever gotten, other than you talked about the jumper cables, any interesting requests for merchandise for you to carry, or anything that you were sort of shocked or surprised by?
Oh,
I think sometimes people come in and we have to remind them that we're not a hardware store. We get maybe some very specific parts
Yeah.
quests. And I think that, yeah, no, I can't really think of anything that's like a shocker. I mean, in the winter time, we've definitely gotten a lot more requests for hockey pucks or hockey
Oh,
sticks, and do we have snowshoes? So now that we are planning, I think, to be open a little bit more in the winter time, that I think there's some opportunities for some more winter
to expand.
product. Yeah, but nothing super odd.
nothing really bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of sort of what's next, do you have any other, it sounds like you've got your hands full, but any other things you're aspiring to do next with a store, or any other plans on the horizon?
We are focusing this year, I think, on our merchandise mix and how we present some of the products. So Brian and I are really excited about our toys area refresh that we hope to do in the next month or two. We want it to feel even more creative and discovery and fun. And we actually hired a toy expert this year.
Oh,
So
cool.
we put out a feeler to the community for, someone young who's looking for maybe their first job. And we've hired, some people to be able to just spend time in the toy section and play with kids and show them how our products are demoed. And so we're excited to kind of give that area some new love. Other things that we did this year, probably we wall art. We found a really great source for some fun vintage inspired prints that are framed. So I'm so excited to get those in and get that kind of discovery, maybe feel of like if you were going to an antique shop and flipping through the boxes and crates of wall art. And yeah, I'm sure there'll be more that we come, but I think this year we're really just focusing on making the experience the best it can be for the customers walking through the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's already pretty awesome. So I think you guys, I can't, in fact, I was just thinking, when am I have to take the dogs up to get groomed again? I think that's the first week in May. Well, this has been super. Before I set you loose, two things, can you just let people know, where are you in Schroon Lake? I mean, I know you're right on the main drag, but, give people an idea of how to find you. And what's your online presence like? Website, where should they look for you? Website, Facebook, Instagram, all of the above?
Yep. So if you're headed southbound on 9, we're on the right-hand side. We've got a 45-foot, 19 whatever display that says Schroon Lake Department Store across the top of it. So
you're kind of hard to miss. Yeah.
But as you said, I mean, it is kind of wild. We definitely have people who walk in and we're like, I had no idea this store was even here, which is kind of cool. So we're right on the main strip, as you said. If you've passed Stewart's, you've gone too far. So we're right down there. And our website is just schroonlakedepartmentstore.com. It's an area of the business that we just kind of popped online because we knew we needed one, but we were kind of trying to work out the brick and mortar aspect of our business first and foremost. But we have a lot of people who have a lot of love for Schroon who are both near and far. So we've been getting a lot more people pushing us to sell more things online. So we're going to actively explore that this year. We've got some new employees who are going to be able to help us manage that. And then we can hopefully start, sending some Schroon Lake sweatshirts all over for anybody who wants to be a little bit closer to their favorite place.
And you can find us there Friday through Sunday until Memorial Day. And then in the heart of the summer, we'll be open 7 days a week.
And Instagram, Facebook, both of those too. Is that sort of great way to get the most recent news?
Yep. Schroon Lake Department Store for both.
Awesome. Yeah, I am jealous of all the great Schroon Lake merch that you have. We're on Loon Lake and we don't have the quantity or quality of the stuff that you guys have. So I'm always in there. I'm like, how come they don't have any Loon Lake stuff? And I'm like, because they're not on Loon Lake. But it's cool stuff. Okay, we end every episode of our podcast by asking our guests to tell us about, one of their favorite places in the Adirondacks. Their sort of, hidden gem. It's sort of, an insider's tip, as we call it. And I'm sorry, but you cannot say the Schroon Lake Department Store. But people have mentioned everything from Custard's Last Stand in Long Lake to Sable Chasm to the Glens Falls Balloon Festival. So it's really what you make it. And often people can't just name one. So, feel free if you, it's a Sophie's choice. You can't just choose one. But, if you had friends coming from Delaware or Pennsylvania to visit for the weekend, what's one place that you're like, oh, we've got to go to this place? What would it be? And you can each answer.
We're foodies, so we're gonna go down that rabbit hole. But
if you give a foodie reference, I'll give an entertainment reference.
Okay. Well, I laughed when you were kind of leading up to that question about hidden gem. There's a bit of like, I want to say this and I don't want to say this because it's one of our favorite places. But ironically, shout out to another local business, The Gem. which is
Mm.
Landing, is a really, really, really phenomenal place. So they serve primarily barbecue style, but everything is just simple but fresh and wonderful. The bartenders there are really wonderful people as well. The staff is really attentive. It's probably one of the best, like, front of house, back of house, all around packages that we've experienced here. And we always end up taking people there. It's a really wonderful, wonderful spot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great craft cocktails too.
Their cocktails are awesome. I ditto too. And my only complaint is that they usually run out of brisket before we get there. But their barbecue is phenomenal. And having lived in Kansas City for a number of years, I feel like I can vouch for good BBQ. But it's great. And their fried chicken sandwich is to die for. So that's a great call. That's a great call.
Yeah,
Amanda, how
ridiculous.
about you?
All right. So if I can't say food, I think I'd say entertainment, which last year we, for the first time, went to the Seagull Festival, which is in Schroon Lake. And Jane, I don't know if you've been, but it's just to give a little bit of background. It's a summer vocal training program that summer students come and they perform opera and musicals in the summertime. And oh my gosh. And most of them go on to become very well-known performers. And
Yes.
the program has been around for as long as our store has, over 100 years, which is just amazing history alone. But then to experience in this very small theater, a just very intimate performance, I'm hooked. I'm hooked. So now I'm the biggest fan, biggest cheerleader. We love the people who are, run the day to day over at Seagull Festival, and we're so proud of what they do. So yeah, I would say that is a hidden gem, because Ryan had become coming up to Schroon Lake for all his life, and we didn't discover this until recently.
You are absolutely right. That is an amazing program. It's been around a long time. The founder was from New York City. He actually was staying at what's now the Lodge at Schroon Lake, or the Schroon Lake Lodge, but before that, I think it was called the Brown Swan. Yeah. And he would go riding at night or in the evenings, and discovered it on, the ground where they founded it. And he was inspired to create that. But you're also absolutely right about up and coming opera stars are like the best of the internationally come and perform there. And I have a friend who is has a PhD in opera and vocal arts, I guess. I don't know what you call it, but that sounds right. But she knew what it was. She was familiar with it too. And and I will, a couple of things about that. And again, I don't want to get up on a tangent, but it sells out really quickly. So if you're an opera fan and you're going to be up here, definitely, it's something you want to do. You should check that out soon. But they also perform. My mom, I remember, they did a preseason performance at Paradox Brewery, or they do things in partnership with the Sembrick in Bolton Landing, which is another really interesting organization and opera museum. And they have amazing music performances during the summer too. So, I always, you talked a little bit earlier, Ryan, about sort of these, microclimates or micro communities even. There's the Adirondacks has just something for everybody. I think people often just associate it with all of the great outdoor recreation activities, which are amazing up here. But there's some amazing galleries. There's amazing performing arts. There's amazing food. There's so much to do here, and shop too. So it's been so great having you guys on. I wish you all the best for this coming summer. I'm going to do my best to continue to support you and appreciate you spending time with us today, as I'm sure you're busy getting ready for the upcoming season.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you very
Jane.
much. We appreciate you.
All right. Have a great day, you guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, listener, thank you again for tuning in to ADK Taste. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps others to discover our show. And for more exclusive Adirondack content and local insights, Take a visit to our website, adktaste.com, and be sure to sign up for our newsletter so you never miss an update. Until next time, keep enjoying and tasting the fabulous Adirondacks. Take care. Bye-bye.